This is what the world is watching.
10 of the most pointless WWE re-signings ever. Number 10, Lord Tensai. At WWE's creative direction for the main event seen on Raw following WrestleMania 28 was to see a new character debut. This character would be known as Lord Tensai and would be played by the talented and well-liked Matt Bloom. Now, Bloom had great success in Japan, and WWE were of the belief that this success would carry over to WWE, but that simply wasn't the case. Tensai's gimmick was generic, and the fans were fully aware that this was the man who portrayed the infamous characters such as A-Train and Albert. The crowd heckled every single one of Tensai's matches, and despite WWE persisting with a strong and elite presentation, the crowd ultimately rejected him as a main event star. It was appreciated that WWE gave Bloom a chance, yet rehiring him to be a main event talent was a bold move that really was never going to pay off. Number 9, Grandmaster Sexay. Now on paper, WWE hiring Grandmaster Sexay in 2004 wasn't the worst idea in the world. Sexay was popular during the Attitude Era, and with Too Cool currently being on SmackDown, it made sense to reunite the celebrated trio. However, WWE decided to rehire Sexay as a solo act for the Raw brand, and this was never going to work. The Raw roster was stacked, and he was never going to eclipse young stars on the roster such as Shelton Benjamin or Edge. He was hired by Jim Ross mainly as a favor to his good friend Jerry the King Lawler, but he was let go within a month, making the rehire a complete waste of everyone's time. Number 8, Mike and Maria Caneles. The duo of Mike and Maria Caneles would debut as an on-screen pairing in WWE at the 2017 Money in the Bank event. This could have been a great hire for WWE, as Mr. Caneles was talented and Maria was a well-established name within the WWE fandom. Unfortunately, the problem was that WWE just didn't have any concrete plans for the duo, and they quickly found themselves in creative limbo for months on end. In 2019, it was reported that the two had signed 5-year deals with the company, and this made little sense as the duo were barely featured on television. Nevertheless, WWE would ultimately decide to let go of both names in 2020. Number 7, Scott Steiner. Scott Steiner was re-signed to WWE in 2002, and from the moment the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion returned at the Survivor Series event, it was virtually guaranteed that Steiner would be a main event star. Steiner received a nuclear reaction at the event, and he was placed into a program with then world champion Triple H on Raw. This highlighted that WWE had really high hopes for Steiner. There were even rumors that Steiner could potentially be cemented as a top babyface on the Raw brand. But there was a big issue. Steiner had drop foot, and this meant that his work had regressed dramatically. Steiner's 2 pay-per-view showdowns with Triple H received universal disdain by fans, and by the time Steiner wrestled the game in a rematch at 2003's No Way Out pay-per-view, the fans firmly decided to turn against him. Following these 2 duds on pay-per-view, WWE moved Steiner down the card, and he would even miss out on the prestigious spot on the WrestleMania 19 match card. Speaking on Grill and JR, Jim Ross reflected on re-signing Steiner, and the Hall of Famer had some interesting comments to make. Yeah, he wasn't. Scotty wasn't healthy to the level that he could go out and be an athlete that he was coming out of Michigan. His body was taking a toll, and a lot of those big muscle guys have that issue, and I think just Scotty wasn't healthy. His injuries and culmination of injuries simply did not allow him to have his normal, back-in-the-day athletic match. Plus, he was getting older. Now, it was widely reported that WWE were made aware of Steiner's drop foot in April of 2002, so they should have had the foresight to realize that rehiring him was a bad financial move. Number 6, Test. And when WWE relaunched the ECW brand in 2006, they decided to rehire a number of former WWE talent, and one of them was Test. This was a bizarre fit, as Test didn't exactly scream extreme, yet with Test having changed his look and putting on a ton of muscle, he naturally appealed to everything that Vince McMahon liked in a pro wrestler. The connection between Test and the ECW audience just wasn't there, and the more WWE tried, the less the fans even cared. The push and presentation felt forced and unnatural, and this was yet again another rehire that WWE should have thoroughly thought through before signing on the dotted line. Number 5, Hitro. In 2022, Triple H went through a rehiring phase, and the game would hire virtually every name that was unfairly released under the leadership of former chairman Vince McMahon. One of the groups that Triple H would rehire was Hitro, and this raised alarm bells from fans as the former leader of the group, Swerve Strickland, was now signed to AEW. The other names in the group just lacked any star power, and their in-ring work was subpar at best. The company itself would struggle to secure a place for the faction on the roster, and all members outside of BFAB were eventually cut from their WWE deals. Rehiring the group wasn't necessarily a bad idea, it's just that the rehire should have been followed up with a concise creative direction. Number 4. Gail Kim. Gail Kim made a brave choice when she decided to leave an acclaimed TNA career behind in favor of returning to WWE. By the time Kim returned to WWE in 2009, the women's division was in a very poor state and the women would barely be able to receive 5-minute matches on television. WWE knew they had no plans to put focus on the women's division, so they made the rehire a very questionable call, and a lot of fans knew it was a complete waste of time. Some fans questioned why Kim didn't have the foresight to realize that a return wouldn't amount to anything, and Kim had a great answer to this during an interview with 411 Wrestling. I was really optimistic, and at that time, I remember because it was past the Diva search and all that stuff, that kind had already long gone, and they were starting to have the women wrestle again, and so I felt very positive and I was like, okay, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I have more experience under my belt. And I had done this stuff with Awesome Kong, so it did build more confidence, and so when I went back, it was disappointing, I will say. Kim's run would of course be a total bust, and she would end up leaving the company once again in 2011. Number 3. Sable. Now, it's often been advised to say never when it comes to former WWE names returning to the company. Fans have seen time and time again that names that had public fallouts with the company have returned to WWE, yet one name that came as a huge surprise was Sable. Sable left WWE in 1999 on horrendous terms, and she even filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against the company. Due to this, Sable returning in 2003 came as a huge shock to everyone, and when Sable was presented as Vince McMahon's mistress, it led to even more questions than answers. Sable's former husband Mark Mero offered some fascinating insight into WWE's rehiring of the former women's champion, saying, and I'll never forget, she said to me, I think she was going to get a little just disappointed with her Hollywood career, and she said, what do you think about me going back to the WWF? I said, oh my gosh, absolutely not after suing them after everything we've been through. I know that the other wrestlers are disgruntled, you're not going to be liked there. I can tell you right now, Vince will never take your phone call. And she said, I already called them, and I was blown away. Mero would then state that Sable was forced to apologize to key names backstage for her prior behavior, but still supported her like, if that's what you want to do, I'll stay home and take care of our daughter, and so she went back to wrestling and she had to apologize to certain people. I think it was The Undertaker or Stone Cold or certain people. Vince made sure that she apologized because if a lot of people were upset that she was coming back, she did that and made amends and went back and, had to do what Vince asked her to do. Sable's second run in the company would fall completely flat, and it was theorized by fans that McMahon only hired her back to humiliate her on television. Number 2. The Ultimate Warrior. A WWE rehiring a previously problematic name is always a risk, and in '96, Vince McMahon decided to rehire the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior had caused WWE problem after problem in the years prior, yet McMahon firmly believed that Warrior would act as a huge name to add to the young roster at the time. Warrior's '96 run was bizarre, as the product had definitely outgrown his character, and Warrior returning just as Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were competing in 60-minute Iron Man matches seemed like an odd juxtaposition. But it only just took a few short months before the issues began, and Warrior proceeded to miss a number of planned live event appearances. In a predictable move, Warrior McMahon would fall out once again, and Warrior's WWE contract would be terminated. And number 1, Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash received the pop of a lifetime when he returned as Diesel at the 2011 Royal Rumble. It therefore made sense that WWE would rehire Nash in some capacity, yet hiring Nash as an active in-ring talent was a move that was always going to end badly. Nash had a ton of problems with established injuries, and during his final few years in TNA, it was obvious that Nash wasn't the wrestler he used to be. WWE's grand idea for Nash was going to see him have a match with CM Punk, yet this was cancelled, and WWE would proceed to move forward with a feud between Nash and Triple H. Nobody was crying out for this feud, especially as WWE already did the feud in 2003, and now with both men being significantly older, it wasn't going to deliver to the standard WWE expected. They failed to understand the value Nash could bring, as making him a wrestler was highly detrimental to this run succeeding. Nash's strengths came from his character and promo work, and it would have been a welcome choice as a GM or a manager. WWE rehiring Nash to compete in matches, including a completely wild sledgehammer ladder match at TLC 2011, was a baffling decision and should have never been made. But there you have it, folks. 10 of the most pointless WWE re-signings ever. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.